We just finished day 3 of Anime Expo. I survived seeing Uchiyama-san! There were many tears and some smearage of my makeup, but
we fixed it though.
We fixed it, and it's good now. Hello there, my fandom friends. My name is Jenna, and today I will be talking about day 3 of Anime Expo 2023. If you've been following along for the past couple videos, you know that my friends and I attended all 4 days of Anime Expo this year for the very first time. I've been making kind of like breakdown videos just like this of me talking about each day, so I'm going to be talking about day 3 in this video, which is going to be super special for me because this was my favorite day of the convention. This is when I got to attend the Koki Uchiyama panel for My Love Story with Yamada-kun level 999. If you've been around here a while or on my Instagram or TikTok, you know that I am a super fan of Uchiyama-san, aka the voice of Rui, the voice of Yamada, Shigaraki, the list goes on. But I love him, and I got to see him in person. This is something that I never imagined would be possible. He is literally my favorite Japanese voice actor. I have only been into anime for a little over a year now, so I'm still pretty new, but he has a very special place in my heart, starting with Rui. I got to cosplay Rui this day, so this is your warning now. I might be crying in this video, but it is because I am completely over the moon, happy and grateful that I got to see him. The thought of ever seeing him, like especially like a Japanese voice actor, and especially someone like him who is just naturally an introvert in real life and very quiet and kind of keeps to himself, it just never seemed possible to me. And so for this to happen, I literally just can't believe it. And I saw him and I still can't believe it. If you're interested in any of my talk of day 3, please feel free to stick around. I'm going to be showing different pictures and videos throughout the video that my friends and I took throughout the day. So starting at the very beginning of the day, I woke up around 4:30 a.m. I had like 3 or 4 hours of sleep or less. Because we had been up late the night previously because we had seen the Demon Slayer panel, and you can watch my video of me talking about all of that. I got up super early, all my friends were still asleep, because I wanted to make my Rui face makeup the best I've ever made it, because I'd be seeing Uchiyama-san, I'd be seeing the actual voice of Rui, and I just really wanted to make it something special for him because my goal was to sit in the front row at his panel, and I just could not believe it. I was trying not to cry. I failed multiple times throughout the day, which I'll explain throughout the video. But I got my Rui stuff on, we headed out. I was incredibly nervous. We got an Uber and drove to the convention, which is what we did every day, and I just remember like all of us were sitting there in complete silence, and I was in the middle in the back seat with 2 of my friends on either side of me, so I was not there. Like this entire morning and afternoon, like leading up to his panel, my brain was like a fog of nothing. Like I was just kind of following my friends around, like I was trying not to cry and be emotional because I was just so happy and like nervous at the same time. I wasn't sure like when to attend the panel, like how many hours ahead of time to get there so that I could guarantee that front row spot that I wanted. I was just a ball of nerves, and we're driving to the convention, and I just remember like a single tear dripping down from the corner of my eye, and I turned to one of my friends and I was like, oh no. She was like, you're crying, like stop. We got to the convention and we got in line. The line wasn't terribly long. We were standing there just trying to chat, take my mind off of things, and I look over and there's like these like hedges of bushes, and I'm looking at them more closely and I'm like, are those spider webs? And I get closer and they're covered in spider webs and spiders. And in my mind, I'm going insane. I'm like, oh my gosh, spiders, because I'm Rui and because I'm seeing Uchiyama-san later. And I don't think I cried at this point, but I was very close. I was so happy to see those spiders. My friends were not. They didn't even come over to the bushes with me. That was really cool to see. I really enjoyed that, and I think like in that moment I was just thinking like everything is coming together, everything is connecting. I'm Rui, I'm seeing Uchiyama-san, like my dreams are coming true. We get through the line, through everything, and we end up going to Starbucks to get coffee, and I get tea. And I literally don't remember anything. My mind was gone, like I previously mentioned, and I know I got my chai tea order, which is the only thing I get from a Starbucks, and I think I drank like maybe like an inch of it, and then I passed it off to one of my friends. I was like, I literally can't drink this. We walked into the actual convention, and I want to say we went to the vendor hall first, and we're walking around there. It was our first time there because we hadn't gotten a chance to look at it the previous 2 days, so that was really cool walking around. But I felt like I literally don't even remember anything from that vendor hall other than when we got pictures and videos down there. We got to see a lot of like the new Spy Family like posters, and they had like Lloyd and Yor, Anya, like cardboard stand-ups, which were really cool. I remember thinking the Lloyd was really awesome. Oh my gosh, it's my boy! That's my boy! Look at all the demons! We just walked around. I know we came across like a mystery pack table with like a whole bunch of mystery packs from a bunch of different fandoms, and at that time I was looking for the Tamayo keychain from the Demon Slayer, I think Series 3 mystery pack, because I like to collect them, and she's like the only one I was missing, so I got a couple of those mystery packs and talked to the person in charge of that like table. They were really nice. They got some pictures of me and my friends, and I actually saw them at San Diego Comic-Con a couple weeks after Anime Expo, which was really cool, and he recognized me because I was Rui again. It's the craziest thing not remembering exactly what was going on because of how like excited and happy and nervous and all these emotions just like crashing in on me. But one of my friends and I decided to go to the panel 4 hours early. That's what I decided on, and so it was actually at the Marriott Hotel. So we left the main convention center and walked to the Marriott. I can't do this, I'm getting so emotional, I'm like reliving this in my head. And I'm like, how did this happen? Also, I'm filming this literally 2 months after Anime Expo because every time I tried to record this video talking about this experience, I would just full on sob. So I'm doing good at this point. I'm starting to feel it now. I'm getting super emotional, but I've grabbed my emotional support Rui plush. My friend and I went to the Marriott Hotel, and we went up to the 3rd floor, which is where it was held. And there was like a Pokemon panel before it, and then like a really long pause, and then the Yamada-kun panel. And so my friend and I got there, I think right before the Pokemon panel, so we were kind of like, I think we were in like the 3rd row off to the side, so it was pretty good seats right off the bat. There wasn't a lot of people in that panel. And then that one ended, the Pokemon one started, and we moved up to the 2nd row in like the front section. And so I was feeling pretty good. I was like, okay, we got the 2nd row, like this is amazing, but no one was moving in that 1st row. And I was like, oh great, like are people camping for Uchiyama? Like what's happening? We sit there through the Pokemon panel, and then there's a super long pause in between the Pokemon panel and the Yamada-kun panel. And thank goodness, in between those two, there was one person that got up from the front row, and it was actually like literally like the frontmost spot that there could be in that panel room. And I like looked at the person, there was this guy, and I was like, are you leaving? And he was like, yeah, do you want my spot? And I was like, yes please, I've been waiting like 3 hours and I love Uchiyama, and like I would love to have the front row. And this guy was like, oh my gosh, you're so dedicated. He had me sit down, and I was kind of chatting with him for a couple minutes, and He just like saw my passion and happiness and excitement for being there, and he was so happy for me. It was the sweetest thing in the world, and he actually gave me like a granola bar because he wanted to make sure I was eating. Shout out to you, like literally you made me so happy. Like there are just such genuinely kind people at these conventions that will do things like that. I sat in the front row, my friends sat behind me, and saved a couple spots for two of my other friends who were going to be joining the panel once it got a little closer. And so we had secured the front row spot for me and the 3 seats behind me for the Uchiyama-san panel. I think I started to get teary-eyed because of how just like in shock I was that I had the front row. I was looking at the seats on the stage thinking like, where is he gonna sit? They had the water bottles all laid out for them and the chairs, and they had like the lights on the stage, they had music playing, and something that was really special is they played History Maker from Yuri on Ice, the anime, which is the main theme song for the story. And at that time I didn't know what that anime was, but I really resonated with the song, and I just remember sitting there listening to it and thinking it was such a beautiful song and how it just related to like how I was feeling in the moment before seeing Uchiyama. It's basically a song about like making your dreams come true, which was literally what was happening for me in that panel room. I remember that song came on, and that's actually the reason why I play that song in my Anime Expo 2023 recap video, which is the last video I posted of just all of my friends and I, all of our memories from the convention into like a short music video, and it's actually to History Maker. So, and at this point I have seen Yuri on Ice and I loved it, and Uchiyama-san was in it, so it's even better. Just the connection to that song and everything that happened that day at the convention was like literally all connected. The room was filling up. I'd say it was probably at least 1,000 to 2,000 people in the room. It was a lot smaller than the Demon Slayer panel room or the Spy Family panel room that we had seen the 2 previous days. The director host person of the room was telling people not to get up because their chairs would get taken. There was no seating spots at this time, so thank goodness my 2 other friends had made it and were in their chairs by that point. I was the only Rui cosplayer there. The panel is getting ready to start. I'm losing my mind. My friends were talking behind me, but every time I tried to talk to them, like my mind just would wander. I'd start to like almost cry. So I was like, okay, literally just look at the stage, calm down, take a breath, like he's coming. This is when the panel started. So like I have explained in my other videos talking about the panels, no videos were allowed, no pictures were allowed, and so unfortunately I do not have any kind of content like that to share. So I'm going to be going over all of the questions and his responses to everything involving Yamada-kun. I hope you can follow along and have fun through my experience and explanation of everything through the passion I will undoubtedly show in this video. They started the panel with, of course, the theme song for Yamada-kun. I think this is when I started like shaking is actually what was happening. I was shaking. Later I was told by my friends that they were quite worried about me because of how much my hands, I guess, were shaking. And I don't really remember that happening in the moment, just probably because my eyes and my brain were focused on Uchiyama and the story of Yamada that was playing out through all of their questions and answers. But apparently I was going wild. And they did the theme song, and then the host of the panel announced Uchiyama-san, and he came on the stage. As you can see from my reaction now, I lost it. I was screaming on the top of my lungs, and I am an introvert at heart. I'm a very quiet, calm, collected person. My mind just, I was focused on him and I was screaming on the top of my lungs. I remember I had my Rui webs that I had constructed out of my string. I was like holding them above my head and I was screaming for this man because of how happy I was to see him. And again, like, it's literally impossible, like looking at him and I'm like, how? Like, this is a dream. Next, they announced the producer of the story, and then they had a very special guest, which my friends and I thought would be Hanai-san because he plays Yamada's friend in the show and is a pretty big part of the storyline, but it actually ended up being the director of the show, which was really cool. Basically, throughout the panel, just like any other panel at Anime Expo or panel in general, the host of it just kind of went back and forth between the three people on stage and they asked questions to them and they answered it. They played a couple scenes. I think they played like 3 or 4 different scenes from the show, and the most notable being, of course, the finale episode with Yamada confessing to Akane that he loves her and that he was busted. They talked a lot about that scene, and when they played it on the screen, like, I'm pretty sure like all the audience was crying because it's just so special. We started off by introducing Uchiyama-san, and at this point, like, I was crying because I was looking at him and because he was presently there in front of my very own 2 eyes, like literally 20 feet away. But what I was most anticipating was hearing his voice, because up until this point, I had not Googled any online videos about him. I had not really looked up what voices he plays in different stories. I wanted to see him for the first time and have it be a complete surprise. And I got to hear his like real voice for the first time, which completely set me off. And he sounded just like Rui, kind of Shigaraki, like Yamada, he plays very much characters that kind of resonate with his own personality, kind of just like the monotone, very calm, quiet type characters. Obviously Rui, of course, and Shigaraki do have their yelling angry moments, but you know, for the most part, very kind of quiet and collected characters, which is very much him. He opened up by explaining that it was his first time in America, his first time in Los Angeles. He was talking about how he really loves American movies, watching them, and how he wished he had more time to explore more of like the Hollywood area, different studio like tourist type areas in America. The producer and the director of Yamada actually have been to America before, so I think it was the producer said he had been here, like this was his 3rd time, and actually they had both been to Anime Expo previously, so that was really cool for them. Of course, they're working on a number of different projects, not just Yamada. The director was talking about how it's just very noticeable that fans of anime in America are just so enthusiastic for their love and passion for these stories, and how it's very unmatched compared to fans in Japan. And so seeing kind of just American fans is very refreshing and exciting for them, which is really interesting because we've heard this a number of times from other Japanese voice actors. So it's always just, it's really cool hearing that we're just such a passionate country. One of the very first questions asked was, how does Uchiyama-san view the Yamada story from our world? He answered this by explaining how he actually read the manga before taking on the role, which I always think is really cool when voice actors do, because they just get the full story right off the bat. They're not having to guess the character as the storyline is going on. They just know the story so that they can carry on that character's evolution from something they already know from reading the original story. And so he talked about how his first impression of Yamada was a very quiet, awkward, and mysterious character, and that wasn't something he wanted to lose. He talked about how Yamada was a very beautiful character inside and out, and he didn't want to lose that kind of cute and cool kind of interpretation of his character that was in the manga, and he really hoped to continue that throughout the anime. Another question they asked Uchiyama in particular was, they kind of explained like how Uchiyama is a pro gamer and that's kind of his hobby, and is there anything else that like Uchiyama likes to do just as much as Yamada likes to game? He didn't really answer this question with like a specific hobby or thing that he particularly likes, but he explained how when he got the role, people were asking him like, well, what's your favorite game? What do you like to play? And he never really knew how to answer that, and so he said Tetris. This got the audience laughing, and it was just so cute. The producer and director then kind of talked more about their time coming to the story and how they changed it from the manga format to the animation format. They talked about how they wanted to keep a very level balance between the comedy aspect of the story and the romance part of the story, which I personally think they did so well. They talked about how in a lot of the animation in this anime, you can see like words pop up on the screen, and it kind of like changes in animation, which is very common for anime, but they added a lot of that in because they wanted to keep the story fun, just how it was in the manga. Another question that was asked of Uchiyama is, what does he think is important aspects to have in the main character of a love story? He talked about how he really wanted to show the evolution in Yamada's character and his feelings for Akane throughout the anime, so starting off not really showing any kind of romantic feelings, and then slowly as they progress on through the relationship showing more and more. He was talking about how he really wanted to show that relationship as relatable and realistic as possible for the audience. He didn't want to take it too far or dramatize it in any way. He wanted it to feel very relatable. They asked Uchiyama what it was like working with the voice actress of Akane. This was actually really interesting to learn about for me because going into this, I didn't know anything about the voice actress of Akane, and I still have obviously a lot to learn about her, but something that Uchiyama was talking about is how they've actually known each other for a very long time. He was talking about how he really wanted to bridge the age gap between them because in real life he is a little bit older than she is, but in the Yamada story, as you know, Yamada is a couple years younger than Akane. And so he talked about that age gap and how that was one of the major, not like struggles he had, but something that he really wanted to work on as a goal to make it as realistic as possible. Uchiyama-san very much praised the voice actress of Akane for her performance in making that age gap feel more real, just as he was trying to do his best at. He said in the beginning she did a really good job of representing Akane as having more of kind of a older sister or sibling type relationship with Yamada, and then slowly evolving into more of a romantic feelings for Yamada. And he just said he was very impressed overall by her acting abilities. The director and producer talks about how they actually added a lot of original content that was not in the manga to the anime, and a lot of that came at the kind of after credit scenes or towards the end of episodes. They wanted to add more to make it a lot more fun and to have more expressive text like I talked about earlier, but their main goal was to just really make this story fun and to portray that off the page into something colorful and beautiful and animated. The host then asked Uchiyama kind of just to talk about Yamada's character development as a whole throughout the story, which he talked about a lot throughout the panel. Again, he explained how he really wanted to make this character as real and organic as possible. Something that all of them talked about extensively was the scene in the finale episode when Yamada kind of expresses his feelings toward Akane after she reveals her feelings toward him, and he says that he is busted. And you might know he kind of had been walking away, but he turned and smiled. And they talked about how this scene in particular they were really struggling with, because in the manga he kind of turns around and smiles kind of mischievously. In the anime they really wanted to portray more of his like happier feelings toward Akane, not so much kind of like a suspicious look, but just genuinely happy. And they toyed with the thought of going back and forth on if they should make Yamada smile or not, because as you know, Yamada does not smile basically at all during the anime until leading up to that scene. They talked about how they did that scene so many times. Uchiyama was like, yeah, we started off with the smile and then we changed it. We didn't do a smile. He changed the inflection of his voice when he said busted, and they actually went with the very first take is what he explained. So they went right off the bat with Yamada smiling, which I think is perfect. It's adorable. Like, that is like one of my favorite scenes of the show. I remember like sobbing during that scene. I know my friends do too, so I think they nailed it. Related to that whole scene, they asked which scene was Uchiyama-san's favorite moment of the story. He did indeed explain how that whole scene in the finale episode was his favorite. The reveal of Akane confessing her love to Yamada and Yamada accepting that and revealing his own feelings to her. It was done in a very creative and special way, and he talked about how Akane and the voice actress of her did a really good job of revealing those feelings and emotions through her voice, which was super impressionable on him. The director during this scene was so sweet and cute. He was talking about how when he was directing that moment and when he was watching it and reading it, he was just like crying throughout the whole thing because of how happy he was that these two characters had come together. And he talked about how he thinks that Yamada actually had feelings for Akane before Akane ever had feelings for him at the very beginning of their story, which is super sweet, but he just didn't really know how to express those feelings or what to do with those feelings until the end, when of course they reveal their love for each other. So that basically covered most of the questions. Of course, I've probably forgotten some things, but I really took to heart a lot of what Uchiyama had to say, and I'm just so forever grateful that I got to experience his answers to this. He was so well spoken, and I'm not saying that like all the other voice actors weren't, but he was just like direct, to the point, and obviously I don't know what he's saying until the translator translates in English for him, but he was just very fluent. He knew exactly what he was saying, and I know he's an introvert. I know he was probably super nervous, as I know I get when I'm presenting, or I can't imagine being on a stage like that and, you know, dealing with such an expressive and passionate audience. I know that must have been a lot for him, knowing that he's a very quiet and calm person, but he did so well, and I was so impressed with him and his answers. And I think that was one of my main takeaways, was just how good of a speaker he was. So after all of the questions were done, they did a raffle. I think they had 3 prizes, and one of them was like an autograph from Uchiyama and I believe the director and the producer, which I literally would have died if I got that. Like, that is such a special gift. But anyway, they did the raffle. It was super funny because when they were reading off the numbers, the host didn't do it. Well, she did do it, but she did it after she asked Uchiyama to do it. And not only asked him to do it, but she asked him to do it in English. And his reaction to it was the funniest, cutest thing in the world, because he was just sitting there probably expecting to just, you know, listen to the host read off the raffles, but not be a part of it. But then he turned into a part of it, and so she was like, okay, like, Uchiyama, do you want to read them? And he was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. But then she was like, in English. And I just remember he kind of like let out like a little like snort laugh thing, and it was just so darn relatable. I know I hate it with a passion when I'm thrown into things like a presentation or something when I'm not prepared for it. It just kind of happens, and that's exactly like what happened to him, and so I felt for him a lot in that moment. But he did so good. He read off the numbers. He actually did one of the raffles, and then they switched to the director and producer to do the other 2. They all did it in English. They all did an amazing job. The raffle was so chaotic because for all 3 raffles, whenever they called out a number, no one would claim it. And so the audience was like, what is happening? Like, where are the winners? And then they went back, and the second time they read them off, there were people that had the numbers, and so they came up and got the prizes. But it was overall very fun, if a little bit chaotic. Something that I neglected to mention sooner, because I know this will probably make me cry, but some way through the panel, and I don't remember exactly when this happened, I want to say it was before the raffle, so a little bit toward the end of the panel, but I had a very hard time watching the other people on the stage, because my eyes were focused on Uchiyama, and I know that's like so bad because I wanted to always look at the person who was talking because that's the respectful thing to do, of course, but my eyes were just glued to Uchiyama. And so I found myself, what I was doing was I was looking at the other people when they were talking, but then my eyes would like go back to Uchiyama for a second and then like back to the person talking, and then like back to him for a second, and then back to the person talking. And I swear, when I did that once, he was looking at me when I glanced over at him, and he was looking at me and he smiled. And yes, he has a very kind of tight smile, not with his teeth or anything, but he smiled, and I looked at him and I smiled back in very much the same way he had smiled at me, and I felt the calmest I had felt all day when he looked at me and smiled, and I smiled back. And of course he looked away really quick because I'd caught his eyes. My mind just went completely blank, and I don't even remember who was talking, what they were talking about. But he looked at me and smiled, and I smiled back, and it was the calmest like feeling I had all day, all throughout the panel, and I don't know how to explain it, but it was like everything vanished and it was just me and him smiling at each other. And it's like one of those things where I just can't believe it happened because it was so special and extraordinary, and like we were literally like 20 feet apart. And I know that like by me being Rui and being the only one in the room as Rui that I knew of, being in the front row must have been very special for him, seeing someone, you know, obviously dressed up. He can't really see my face that well because I have all the makeup on. I'm wearing all white. There's red streaming down my face because I'm crying and the makeup won't hold. There were a couple times throughout the panel that I can say we made direct eye contact with each other, and it was really funny because he was doing one of those things where like I would glance at him for a second and he would be looking at me, but then as soon as my eyes get to him, he like looks away. And it was just the funniest, cutest thing, and it happened like literally at least 3 times, if not more. Like this was happening constantly, and it was making me like laugh inside because it was just so cute, and like he was like looking at me and then just like looking away when I would make eye contact with him whenever he wasn't talking, of course. And I don't know how to explain the feelings I felt in those moments. It was at this time of the panel when they started to say their thank yous and their goodbyes. We did a group picture. Here it is, and I literally, I'm like right next to him. Like I'm right there. It's just, I can't believe this picture. Like I literally look at this picture like every day. I have it like favorited on my phone. I feel like I post it all the time. They each said their kind of last things before they went off the stage, and of course Uchiyama stayed with me the most. He talked about how he was super surprised that people overseas and especially in America have resonated so much with this story, this love story, and he was super appreciative of that. And I know that I've talked about this so many times in the past couple of videos, but these Japanese voice actors are just so incredibly responsive to the fact that us Americans are so excited over their anime. He explained how he was super happy and appreciative that he got to experience, I think he said, America's love for this story, but not only this story, but just Japan's stories in general, all of anime, and that was something that really resonated with him. Uchiyama was talking about streaming services and how they're such a great addition to sharing content all over the world, Japan's content to America, Americans' content to Japan, and everything else in between, everywhere across the world. He said he was so happy that the love and passion that is put into Japan's artwork, their anime, can be expressed and then brought over to America in such a quick succession, and of course how us Americans have responded to that through all of our passion and love for it. This is where I think I started crying again, but he said that he's going to go back home to Japan and he's gonna work extra hard on all of his animes and all of his stories and his work so that he can come back to Los Angeles again for Anime Expo in the future. This is when I lost it again. The red was streaming down my face because the thought of seeing him again in the future just warms my heart. And I know by the time I see him again, I will love him and appreciate him so much more, because I know I'm going to continue to watch things that he has voiced, stories that he's a part of and characters that he's voiced, and him as a person. Now that I've seen him in person, I'm going to start researching more about him, and so I can, you know, learn more about him as a person and not just as these characters in these stories. All in all, the director and producer and Uchiyama were very, very appreciative of our love for anime, and something that Uchiyama said is that he hopes that we continue to enjoy their stories, Japan's stories in general, and continue our love and passion. It was at this time that the panel ended and I watched him walk off the stage. I don't even know what the host was saying because I was watching him, and I'm sure people can relate to this, but when you love someone so much and you look up to someone so much, watching them walk off the stage, not knowing when you'll ever see them again is like a really tough feeling. Deep in the heart, and so that's kind of what I was going through, watching him walk away and not knowing, will I see him again, and you know what the future brings. But I think I'll see him again. I will be for sure going to Anime Expo again next year and years to come because it was such an amazing experience, and I know I'll see him again. I remember I curled up into a ball. I kind of like went forward in my chair like that, and I don't know what was happening. I think there was a very big panel after Uchiyama's panel I don't even know what it was, honestly. Like my brain was not there, but there were so many people. I just remember like the host talking on the microphone and there was music playing, the lights were still going, it was like blue and purple, and people were getting up and laughing and talking, and I was just curled up in a ball crying. Trying not to get any of the red from my face onto my white outfit as Rui. And my friends come up next to me and I heard one of them ask if I was having like a panic attack or an attack of some sort, and I wasn't. I was okay. Well, I don't know if I was okay. I really was crying hard and I don't remember much, but I remember my friends were trying to get me to go to the bathroom so I can wash up my face and hopefully fix it, because there were just red streams down my face. I took a video of myself after the panel and I'm really glad I did, because I don't obviously remember my exact reaction to everything, but I've watched the video so many times and you literally can just hear me like gasping for air. And then once I got to the bathroom, I like locked myself in a stall for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, and I know I took a video of myself and I didn't know what to say, but I was talking about Uchiyama, I was talking about Rui, Yamada, and met up with my friends again. And at that point we were trying to get to one of our other friends because we were going to take pictures and walk around some more. We went to like the entertainment hall, but before that we had to make our way from the Marriott Hotel back to the main convention area. I just remember being incredibly embarrassed because my face was just a wreck. It was just red streaming down my face. I was still crying a little bit, and I just remember like covering my face. It's like, I don't want anyone to see, because like from my nose up it was pretty much fine, but like from my eyes, like the corners down, it was just a big red smear. We met up with our friend, we went into the entertainment hall after I cleaned up my face. At that point I had reapplied everything, and it actually looked pretty good. I was impressed. It wasn't perfect or anything like it had been before, but it was decent. And so we walked around some more. At this time, I was feeling so happy. My mind was, I wouldn't say back to normal, but I didn't have that kind of foggy sense that I had before. I was very coherent and I was just having a great time with friends. We got a lot of pictures in the entertainment hall. They had a lot of really cool, not like green screens, but just like backdrops that were kind of like how a green screen would work. So they had like a forest area, they had like a classroom, they had cherry blossoms. At that point, I think we went outside, we took some pictures by that same tree we got pictures with the previous day, and we're just having some fun together. And yeah, that was pretty much the day. We went back to our hotel and we like ordered food at like midnight, and I ate a little bit, but not a lot because I was just feeling so many emotions. But I seriously cannot believe this happened. I'm so ready for next year. You better be there. Uchiyama-san, please come back. I'm begging you. You were amazing. You're such a good person and I love you. And thank you to, of course, the director and the producer for coming in, and everyone who made that panel possible. I just wanted to say a huge thank you for sticking around and listening to this story, this super emotional story. I think I contained myself a lot better than I would have if I recorded this like immediately after that day. And so I'm glad I waited a little bit so I could actually talk to you without just like sobbing. But I hope you enjoyed, and let me know your favorite moment from the video and any of my memories that resonated with you. If you have any questions, if you went yourself and had any memories that you wanted to share from Anime Expo. But I hope you enjoyed. Bye!